Hello and welcome to GameMasters Studio, where we'll be talking tabletop role-playing games, tips and tricks that you can use to help bring your game at home up to the next level. Today we're doing a little retrospective to the Season 1 Darkhounds that just wrapped up, and talking with the cast a little bit about what it was like to play in the game. Let's do the introductions around the studio first. My name is Jerry, a.k.a. Frieden.
I'm Jared, a.k.a. DM.F.
And for our special guests in today, we do have the rest of the cast of the Darkhounds. In Darkhounds playing Jorell Magnusson, the Druid, we have David. Go ahead and say hi.
Hello.
We are an audio-only podcast as well. Waving to the microphone doesn't do anything. Playing Neriah Stonefury, our Eldritch Knight, we have Ashley.
Hi.
And the role of Mizr Snowfang, the adorable polar bear druid, or paladin, sorry. Paladin of the Ancients, we have JR.
Hello, everyone.
So, the first season, as we're calling it, of Darkhounds has wrapped up. This goes from the beginning of the campaign up until the party goes into quarantine at the return from the Dungeon of Dripping Blood. This isn't going up until everything has been posted, so everybody should be aware of all that. Although we have recorded into Season 2, so do keep in mind that we don't want to give out spoilers. Or do we?
Dun dun dun!
But we wanted to talk with you guys about playing a game that's designed for being in front of an audience of people who are also, crossing over with the podcast and looking to run a better game. So we wanted to get your thoughts on Season 1, starting with just the simple question of what was your favorite moment out of Season 1? Of anything that happened, what was your favorite? I'll go ahead and start because mine actually happened off camera. At the end of the second session of play, which was the very end of what wasn't recorded to get up in the 360 view, the party was tracking what was at that time Clovis, even though they weren't aware of it. They just knew that it was a powerful evil, as well as the townfolk that they were enlisted to assist. And it came to a fork in the road, and Clovis went one way and the townsfolk went the other. And the party had to decide which way they were going. And if I remember correctly, it was Jorell that was actually tracking through Detect Magic and went off after, to follow Clovis first. And everybody paused for a moment. And then Mizr was like, well, if there's an evil to fight, that's what I'm here for. And, Neriah went to, after that, because she wasn't abandoning her friends. And Tristan had to make the choice and chose to do what was important, and then Ascott was kind of left in, we have a job to do, but
he was also really do we understand that there's a very powerful evil and we're following it?
I just liked that we were all at that junction of make a choice, and everybody made the same choice for different reasons, and made that distinction.
Well, actually, if I remember correctly, my suggestion was I kind of stopped because I was like, do we want to follow the tracks this way? Because I still see them. And I just kind of sat down, and Mizr was he's the one who's like, well, I mean, if there's evil afoot, and then Neriah, if I remember correctly, she's the one who went first. She kicked up her sword and just started walking.
Yeah, I think Neriah did actually lead the pack on that.
And then we were just like, all right, we'll just go that way.
Go this way, guys.
That might have
Mizr was probably right on her heels,
rather than order they left, but just the order they made the decision.
Yeah. I was more so interested. Jorell was like, well, the tracks go that way. Mizr was like, evil goes that way, and Neriah's like, I'm going that way. So
you guys can all think about this, but I'm going.
Well, not my overall favorite moment. That was probably my favorite Ascott moment too.
Yeah.
The dialogue with him and the unseen that he was going with, and him talking to himself was that first point where we finally got to see something's off about him.
Yeah.
So, what was your favorite moment from the Season 1?
Mine, that's tough. It comes down to two. I've got my favorite and then the overall favorite for the group. But I gotta say, when Jorell first told us his story, that was probably my favorite moment of the series so far. It's one of the first times that I can really remember actually having an emotional response to another player's role-playing.
Yeah.
To the point where right after I was even said, wow, that was a great piece of role-playing. I'm so used to hack and slash groups that having someone in the group like that that can roleplay was awesome. It kind of helped me step up my game and redefine a bit with Mizr as well. So,
And it was a nice piece and important to the character of Jorell and it's been revisited a couple times too.
I think my favorite piece for me, which really defined Mizr, unless that's a better topic for a little later,
Go ahead.
was when we first started our training with Agatha, and it kind of showed the playful spirit, and he got the leap on her because she beat him the first time, quite hard. And then that whole scene between him and our guild leader and Agatha all kind of fighting it out, tearing up the guild hall.
That's highlighted. I think it's episode 3, Tussling Bears.
Yeah.
It's actually, we actually named the episode after that whole thing where like you're frolicking and
Probably
tussling
my
around.
favorite moment of Mizr was one of those defining moments when I realized how he was going to shape up moving forward.
Yeah, I actually had down for mine. One of the other questions that we have is what was your favorite moment involving another character, not your own. So I mean, you kind of had Jorell's.
Perfect.
Mine was actually. It was Mizr diving off the balcony at Orion in the bar to start that fight off. Because I also know that I worked with you on making the character ahead of time, and you knew like what you wanted to do mechanically, but you weren't sure where you wanted to go as a character with Mizr. And then you kind of hit that, and from there you kind of hit your stride and going in and really developing into the big cuddly ball of love/death.
And that's really where it started to come together for me as well. So yeah, definitely.
So, David, what was your overall favorite moment from season 1?
Ooh.
You were given these questions ahead of time.
Well, I'm kind of like listening to like people. It sounds like everybody's kind of doing what was my character's favorite moment, or what my favorite moment of my character versus what was my favorite moment of somebody else's character.
Well,
versus
we kind of have it as what was your favorite moment, and what was your favorite moment that didn't involve your character.
Yeah.
Just so that you can't be all selfish and be like, "Oh, my favorite stuff was my own stuff."
Awesome.
Well, my favorite moment probably with the game as a whole is probably right there with like just Mizr playing with everybody. That's all. Like that's just one giant like hilarity fest. It's like in my mind is a comical kind of takeaway from this otherwise serious role playing game that we're doing right now, and then they have this little moment of basically it usually surrounds Mizr of just him being a goofball because he's
Exactly.
It's almost like he's the youngest, most naive of the group, but he has that just that paladin like good time. He's kind of reminds me of Captain Marvel in that sense, where he's big and powerful, but still has that innocence of like a 10-year-old.
Hopefully that'll keep him safe in season 2.
Foreshadowing.
Spoilers.
And this fights with Orion kind of become a running gag.
Yeah.
And they have spoilers continued into season 2.
Yeah. Well, they're kind of kindred spirits in a way. Like Orion is also very powerful, and can throw down, but has that child mentality. Like, like I describe him as being kind of like, like a 14-year-old kid, even though he's lived far beyond that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they're kind of kindred spirits, and that was quickly kind of role played through without being said. You know what I mean? Like, oh hey, you're a big bear man. I'm gonna turn into a bear. Let's tussle.
And that also really highlighted the first time for us, at least, some of Orion's real power. It's hard to get an NPC in battle with you throwing dice. So having both Agatha and him, going after him, and we were barely even keeping up with him, and he was holding his own and then some.
Yeah.
Barely
Exactly.
keeping up with him.
That really showed his power too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Very cool.
It's going to be about you, Ashley. For your favorite moment, and possibly favorite moment that doesn't involve Neriah.
Well, a lot of my favorite moments are coming up. Season 2, actually.
Yes.
But so far, season 1, I think my favorite moment, not involving Neriah, was the exchange between Clovis and Jorell, because you kind of got some interesting backstory, and it was a great fight scene and everything. Just kind of all around really great D&D session there. I also really enjoy how our group doesn't really have a defined leader, but doesn't really need one either, I don't think. Neriah is the one that's gonna just decide and make the decision for the group after all the men are bickering, and she just is like, yeah, I like this idea, so I'm gonna go for it. And Jorell's our wisdom, and Tristan's our sound advice, and Mizr is our
Comic relief.
Yeah, and not in a bad
But he's
way.
also kind of like the spirit of the group.
He is, yeah,
yeah.
for sure. So I just really enjoy the dynamic in the group as well.
And I also feel like Mizr is the big bruiser.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's the nice guy, but he's also the kind of feels like everything's gonna go bad. He's kind of gonna be the last to fall.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
think until where we're at online right now, it's been played up that Mizr has been like the tank. Like, he's had the highest AC, he's walked into the middle of things, and he's like, I'll just sit here and dodge attack all day long, and I'll just let everything hit on me. I'll take the hits so you guys can do your thing. Yeah. But now with the shift that we're having, and you'll see more of this as we get into Season 2, but you've all seen that we've got these magic items, the intelligent bonded items that you all have. Those items are shifting things. Like, he got a very powerful attack-based item. Yeah. So now Mizr can really put out some serious damage when she starts actually whipping that maul around.
Oh, yeah.
Neriah can just walk into the middle of people that don't have magical attacks and just go, ha ha. And she has an AC that rivals, Mizr's now, so it kind of shifted. So, not that Mizr still can't take a hit and be the tank in the middle of it, but you have that innate ability to just sit there and tank things. Yeah. And so now we have two viable tanks with it kind of leaning in your favor.
And now Jorell can't die even if he wanted to.
Yeah, now Jorell is going to take, a small act of a god to kill Jorell with his Ring of Regeneration. And Tristan's, got his luck and, extra HP, so, you can all take a hit. You don't have the HP of the party, but you recover faster than the rest of the party. I just think that there's this real nice balance between the whole party. There's no one person that really stands out in any one real regard, but you all have different properties and things to complement. So like you said, even though there's no one set, hey, you're the leader, we follow your lead, Neriah tends to be the one to kind of put her first foot forward, but after everyone's already had an equal say.
Yep.
So you're kind of like
a passive leader.
But almost more like the instigator. You get everyone discusses everything, everyone gets everything going, but then you initiate the actual forward movement of whatever decision that seems to be the best option.
Yeah.
Jorell has the abundant life experience, so he brings the wisdom, like you said. Mizr is kind of like the spirit, of the party, and really, I think he's going to be like the grounding that kind of helps keep you all, So, the qualities that I'm kind of articulating is I think they're all different things that will kind of keep you going and safe in a different respect. You know what I mean? So, with Tristan, having his experience, and he's had some bad times, but he's got a lot of good practical combat experience with the mercenary group that he's a part of. So he kind of has the tactical side. Jorell has the whole maybe we shouldn't do that kind of I've seen people jump off cliffs. It's probably a bad idea. Mizr will kind of help. I feel like he's gonna be the big psychological aid. Oh man, we're going through some dark times. Things are getting rough, and Mizr will be like, cheer up, guys. It's cool.
Got this.
Granted, however, I do see that Jorell versus Mizr's impetuous. It's I would be like, don't jump off. Mizr jumps off the cliff. Don't jump off the cliff like he just did.
Yeah, exactly. You'll be like, don't jump off the cliff. You'll be like, it'll be fine if I jump off the cliff. Whee!
Yeah. Dinosaurs. Spoilers.
So, last of the table, Jared.
Yes.
Season 1. What was your? You don't need to necessarily come up with one that didn't involve your character. But what do you think was your favorite moment from the season 1?
I'll try to pick one that you guys haven't already said. I actually, again, like everyone, I think we all have a lot of... It's also fresher to remember we have a lot of favorite moments from Season 2, which hasn't come up yet.
Yeah.
Season 1, one of the things that stood out to me, and again, this is kind of your pick, Jerry, where it's technically... It's not so much that it's off camera, so much as it's one of the 2 lost sessions that we're going to try to get pieced together, pre-360. But it was the deal with the house in the woods, where, and again, nobody's going to know what we're talking about, but there was 2 sessions that we played before we went 360 that haven't got up. I'm going to try to piece together what I can. We had a lot of technical issues between microphones and cameras and blah, 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 blah. Someday when we get them up, you'll know what I'm talking about, but there was a house in the woods while they're on their way to the first town there, Meriton, I think. And, am I right?
Was that the one with the secret red room of pain?
Yes.
Yeah.
Esterwin.
Okay, yeah, oh yeah, I'm sorry, you guys were in Meriton.
forgot
Okay,
that.
so yeah, on your way to Esterwin, they encountered some gnolls, blah, 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 blah. They find this house about, like, a half day's travel before the town, like, south of the town. And it had this girl chained up in the room.
Zombified before we got there.
Yeah, zombified before they got there. Not even the whole thing about what was going on with the girl, but like how the party kind of dealt with it and addressed it, and became more of it started as the party, but the one that carried it the longest was Tristan. The whole like, we need to find out who owned that house.
Let's do the
We need to
research.
track down the owner of the house.
Yeah.
You know, like you guys were in a town that had been evacuated and you know that you were sent to deal with a bunch of shadows and undead. And still, you never lost the focus of like, hey, let's go to the town hall and check the records. I want to know who owns that house, so we can find out who had this poor girl chained up in this hidden slave room in the back of the house.
Yeah.
Because this needs to be addressed, regardless of everything else that's going on.
We did find a name, but
Yeah.
Yeah, you were given a
Back to
name,
it,
and
like-
sadly, you haven't really been given an opportunity to really explore that.
We did pass the information along to the guild, if I remember.
Yes, you did pass it along to the guild. So
And they said they were going to look into it.
yeah, they were going to look into it as well. Yeah, it was one of those like you had put in a requisition for like some research to be
that's right.
done. So like
Yeah.
it's kind of been shuffled off to the side, but not forgotten, at least by me.
Hang on, end of the world incoming.
Yeah.
Wait, we have to go deal with this guy.
Yeah.
Just to show him.
Well, the only reason we're not is because we're still waiting on the research to get done. Like if we had an address here, we would be like, tell Clovis to hold on. We'll be right back.
Yeah, please hold.
I just think it'd be humorous if we sat down and was like, Clovis, I don't know you're all about this, but there's this guy. He did this thing. Convince him to be like, he did what? It's like, hold on.
A poor young innocent girl.
even I have boundaries.
There are lines you don't cross.
Dude, not cool.
I will send some shadows to dispatch him immediately.
Actually, there was one moment that after talking with you after the fact was the whole like the riddle situation.
Yeah, that was
talking with
fun.
you. I thought that was pretty hilarious how that played out.
Yeah, and the dungeon of dripping blood with the skeletons.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, again, it's up with the room with the riddle where the you found the password to the door was death, because it was what comes suddenly and never leaves. I think was the riddle, and you guys were trying to find the answer to that riddle, which was the password to open the other door to move forward through the dungeon. And the joke that Jerry thought that I threw the skeletons because you guys weren't coming to a decision. Because like you guys talked about the answers, and, or what the hypothetical possible answers to the riddle could be, and then I threw the skeletons at you. But the actual reason that I threw the skeletons that had the answers in the skeleton wasn't that because you hadn't definitively stated what you thought the answer was going to be. It was that, in my opinion, David came up with the answer too quickly. Like one of the first things out of his mouth was death. But then you're like, well, it could be this, and it could be this, and it could be this. And then I'm like, well, I have this freaking encounter because I thought this was trickier than it was supposed to be. I want to throw these skeletons at them. They're pretty much one-hit guys anyway, so it's not like going to tie a bunch of stuff up. Let me throw these skeletons at them real quick. And then it will also definitively give you the answer is death. 5 skeletons, letter in each of their skulls. Boom, okay.
Wait, wasn't it wheat?
Yes.
Well, that was the joke after I got the first letter, and I'm just like, oh, yep.
Yep.
I got this.
Yeah, I love, I think the first letter I gave you was like an H, and you're just like, yep, death. And I'm like, I gave you an H! 5-letter word with an H in it, only word in existence, death. That's it. You got it. So yeah, that was another fun moment. And again, for me it was fun because of the misinterpretation. Sometimes it's funny when the group assumes that the DM does something for one reason, but in your head you're like, I had nothing to do with anything.
So we've all been playing for a reasonable amount of time, and you always have stuff that comes up at the table that wasn't what you planned. Something that your character develops or grows or that you learn just from playing organically that you didn't originally plan out. So one of the questions we had on here was, what did you learn about your character playing it over the course of season 1? Does anybody want to go first, or?
That's a toughie.
I mean, since I was the one that wrote these questions, I know exactly what mine was, and I've tested over it for a little while. And again, for me, Tristan got his best character development so far early on in season 2.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people got,
Yeah.
and Neriah especially. I think.
Yeah.
But for season 1, that's a little bit of a tricky.
That was my
It's
first
hard,
thought too,
yeah.
was in season 2.
Yeah.
Yes, and
A lot of it came with the stuff that we didn't record, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That we
Yeah.
missed out on. I was like, ah!
Yeah.
well, actually, I was thinking of a different, what has now become a running gag in season 2 with Tristan.
Yes.
But for season 1, mine was actually kind of interesting because I came into it, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I had a rough idea, like I had played a Tempest Cleric in another game that didn't last very long. I wanted to give it another shot. I didn't know what to do, and I felt that Stormmane was kind of a flat character, and I just kind of was going into it. And then we got the artwork in. The commissions from Adam Guinea. And we got Neriah and Ascott first, and they looked awesome, and then we got Jorell and Mizr, and they looked great. And then when I got to finally see the one of Tristan, it was like, I didn't know really much of anything about the character. He was very flat for me. He didn't have much of, he had kind of a generic backstory that I kind of ripped bits and pieces from other people and put them together into something. And the character wasn't really there. And then it was Adam's artwork. You know, I looked at that and I'm like, it's an awesome, turn around for the camera. You know, it's an awesome piece of artwork. It gives kind of that it gives the character a character for me. And I didn't really expect that. I was absolutely shocked. I love all of Adam's art that I've seen. It's all been great, and that really helped me learn who my character was from seeing the way he put it together. And I don't know if I had an image of Tristan beforehand, but since then, any mental image I've had of him has pretty much been Adam's artwork, entirely defining it.
Yeah, I definitely do not regret getting Adam to do work for us all. I know that there was some miscommunication on the original thought process for Jorell, and that's unfortunate, but...
This is like wandered out of the woods look.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, and I'm like, you know, and after discussing more of it, after already having the art, like, I think that we came up with a good, like, okay, this was him crawling out of the tree.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
He would probably look closer to that, yes.
Yeah.
First
You know,
session.
now, like, you know, if you were to see, you know, like the end episodes of season 1, and very much so shortly into season 2, he is more of a Sean Connery kind of, you know, appearance and look. And there's going to be a new generation of art from Adam for everyone coming soon, and that will represent Jorell
Super exciting.
as well.
It's funny you say that about your character, because I almost agree to the most part, but unfortunately I cannot distinguish your character's blonde hair with your dark hair, and I think I transposed that already. So your character will always have dark hair in my mind. I can't not think that.
I thought you were going to say that you always look at me and see me as a blonde.
With locks.
But that's because I'm always like right across from you, and I'm just like, when you're talking, you're in character, and I'm just like, dark hair. That's the only thing.
I know for me, season 1 was really hard to get into character. I sometimes have a difficult, probably more often than not, getting into a character, and definitely in season 2 there's been a major transition.
Yeah, same here.
Looking forward, I think, and yeah, I don't know. But I think I agree the artwork helped, because I didn't really have, like, I had kind of an idea of what I wanted Neriah to kind of look like, but, you know, it is like David said, you know, you always picture the character maybe a little different, like whoever's it is, and then, yeah, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think personally for Neriah in season 1, one thing that I don't think it was necessarily maybe a defining moment, but a trait that you made a decision, then you've stuck with it, is again the whole like being the one to put her foot forward. Like, you know, like way back in that session where like there's a fork in the road, you know, and it's like, well, I'm going this way.
Right. Well, even like our very first session, which of course wasn't recorded. It was everybody was standing in front of the guild hall door, like, what do? We're hearing the sound. What do we do? And she just kicked the door
right
in,
yeah.
and everybody's like, okay,
Yeah, guess we're going in.
we're going in.
Yep.
That I really like that about
So
her.
and that's something that you've stuck with and carried forward. So
Yeah.
even though you might not have seen it as a defining moment, I
Right,
think
yeah.
since you decided to
Yeah.
hold on to that
Yeah.
concept.
For sure. Yeah.
So, JR, what did you learn about Mizr through playing him through Season 1?
Well, playing Mizr to begin with was a really hard choice for me because I've tried characters in the past that are animalistic. And doing any kind of an animal hybrid character is really tough. I've had a Minotaur before, and I mean, as fun as that character was, I never was able to give it life or have the other side of it than just being a humanoid personality, a person, as we think. But with animals, there's always, that other side of it as well. So with Mizr, and I finally decided to kind of overcome that, and rather than being terrible at playing an animal-type character, I think I've kind of helped myself learn how to play something that's not just your typical humanoid. Which is really hard to do, but I finally feel like, especially now we're getting into Season 2 more, that I've got it. It's actually starting to come together.
Yeah, I think that's also been shown in your role playing. With doing things like Mizr, like drinking. You described him as rather than picking up the drink to drink from the cup, he just dives his muzzle in,
Yep.
or he kind of sprawls across the table because he doesn't there's chairs, there's tables, we can sit on either one, right?
Yep.
But I also think it's great that you've gotten that in combat. There's a lot of times where Mizr will dive into combat and he's got a weapon, but he goes claws and bites and stabbing with the horn on his helmet. Rather than we're going to stand face to face with each other and swing swords, he's diving in and tearing things apart.
Yeah.
So to actually convey a character through combat is a nice way to keep that consistency.
Yeah, he goes more towards the animalistic side in combat. Yeah.
So that's definitely been my biggest stumbling block and probably learning point as a character growing through Season 1. I can't wait for Season 2 to get into it more now.
Yeah, I don't know if this is anything that ever enters your mind, but in my mind, anytime you have a situation where you need to approach it, where do I come from a role-playing standpoint, knowing the personality of Mizr, I always think, what would Yogi do? They're smarter than your average bear, playful.
What's Mizr's intelligence score?
Mizr's intelligence is an 11. His wisdom is also an 11.
Yeah, so smarter than the average bear.
But, yeah.
I was hoping you were like a
Playful and
13 or
fun.
14, so you could go smarter than the average human. And then for David, because Jorell had the very detailed backstory that we've come into, so it seems like you walked in the door with a very well fleshed out character and a good idea of what you wanted to do. Was there anything you learned or kind of surprised you to learn about Jorell through the course of Season 1 play?
About Jorell specifically, no. About what the DM would allow me to do with all of that information was really, I wasn't expecting to, really get into his, traumatic events that early on, actually. But, when we had that moment where I kind of role-played my backstory of Jorell explaining it, I was anticipating that to be more of kind of bits and pieces at first and not really done early on. But then when it got out so early, I was like, oh cool, because I was like,
it fleshed out Jorell for me.
And I mean,
Quite a bit, actually.
For the GameMasters Studio podcast, we're often bringing up the two rules, the rule of cool and the rule of fun. You want to do what's fun for people and you want to do what's cool for the players because they are the stars of your show. And I think that's an opportunity that did really let Jorell shine to have that come up.
Yeah, I mean, and everyone's going to have different, thoughts on how best to approach that kind of stuff. And I know that even though you come up with this really cool background, sometimes you just want to share it with the world, but then other parts of you is kind of like, well, it would be really cool if this kind of got kept to myself for a while. And while I appreciate the second thought on that, the latter, where oh, well, it'd be cool if this came out in bits and pieces, and the party has to kind of know me for a long time to really get to know the truth about me. D&D games blow up all the time, and there's so many reasons why it's just best to just get it out there. You know what I mean? If you have something cool, it's the same tip that a lot of people will say for DMs, and that we've said before. If you have a cool idea, just use it. Like, don't wait, because you don't know what the next session holds. You don't even know if the group will be together the next session. Like, if you have a cool idea, use it. If you have an awesome combat encounter, for a DM, use the awesome combat encounter. If you have cool concepts that for your player that you want the party to know about eventually, don't wait till eventually, just get it out there. And also, the more information, the more background that you guys have for your characters, the less than I have to do. You know what I mean? Like, in the sense of, like, I don't have to come up with a background for Jorell. Jorell has a background. But since he has a background, I should use the background. Why, force storyline into a character's mouth when they already have their own storyline, so...
Yeah. If we were talking more Season 2, not to give anything away, that's the biggest thing, that we've kind of come across that I've learned with that as well, is being able to actually play my character and paint the story, give me a picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That concept is changed the way that I look at a lot of things, and I think from a player standpoint, I've taken advantage of a lot of DMs and just expected too much out of them.
Yeah, I mean, every group's different, every DM. Some DMs want to basically write the character for the player. In my opinion, it's the player's character. They should be, if they don't want to, if they just want to kind of phone it in and show up and play, like, I'm just here to hang out with friends, that's a different story. The DM can feel free to jump in.
Game, though.
But, I wouldn't say I expect, but I hope that, the players that show up to my table are going to have at least some semblance of a concept of a character, and if we need to help flesh that out at the table, then by all means we'll do that. But if you have an idea, or if you have a 14-page backstory, I will read it, and we will do what we can with it.
That's kind of a situation I'm in one of the games I'm running is, there's 5 players, and 3 of them have given me backstory that I have, like, already put into the game, and I'm like, oh, I'm so excited, kind of like, for that. But then there's 2 other players that I don't really have, like, either they have a backstory, like Ashley's character, but it doesn't really play into what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have 2 characters that I kind of have to, since they don't have a backstory, I have to create a story for their characters to really kind of get them invested, and that's kind of the, it's a little more difficult, but it's kind of at the same time, I'm still kind of like, oh, well, kind of a little more fun too, because I'm like, well, I could do this, I could play with the characters a little bit like that.
Yeah, it's nice when you have the mix like that, because then you're like, okay, they've done a lot of the work for me, I just need to figure out how to twist it into my story. But then I also have these people who are like, well, they're open books, I can do what I want with them, Like, now again, I had a little bit of that with Neriah. Like, Neriah had some backstory. I'm just like,
A little bit.
but, nothing compared to Jorell. You know what I mean? So, like, Jorell's got pages of backstory, and Neriah's got, like, a couple paragraphs. And I'm like, okay, that leaves a lot of options for me to play with. But I also have to make sure that I'm very true to the few paragraphs that are written. I can't go, well, let's just throw these out and rewrite these.
Yeah. I actually really like that a lot. So, yeah.
So now the world of Wrath itself has, in many ways, been a collaboration between yourself and your players that are playing in the game. Mm-hmm. They've been given lots of opportunities to make and shift the world and design things for you to fit in there. Have you had anything good come up through the course of play of the Darkhounds that has really had kind of an influence on Wrath?
More than you guys even know right now. More than you even know. Like, there is, like, the only person that even has a clue of how much, like, is coming down the road and how much I have changed core principles of Wrath behind the scenes that haven't even come in yet. The only person that has a clue is Adam, because he plays D&D, but not in this group and not regularly, and I still, he's a close friend, so, like, I can go and I can talk to him and like, these are ideas I came up with! I need to tell somebody! Because I can't tell you guys, because it will spoil so much. But yeah, obviously you've gotten, we've met Clovis, we have a taste of Clovis, and Clovis is helping me, kind of bring back some ideas and some adventure hooks that I had kind of played with Jerry in different games, with the whole, like, the dragons returning, and, which is a core principle of Wrath, where, like, their ages are based on, the return and the disappearance of dragons approximately every 2,000 years. So I get to kind of bring that back. What happens with that, obviously, will be left to see how things play out in Darkhounds. But there's also the character of Clovis, which again was based off of some of Jorell's background. Like, oh, well, he had this thing where he went and he was basically the equivalent of like a 20th level epic level character before he took his nap and had partied with some really powerful adventurers. and one of his background story hooks, and again, I'm incorporating some of his history into Wrath history, was there was a big dragon thing that he dealt with.
He mediated like a truce between
Yeah.
the two, well, his group did.
So kind of like I kind of was inspired by some of his background and incorporating some of this into Wrath's history and creating Clovis's background. And I kind of, again, because he had 14 pages of backstory, I could kind of toss out / rewrite a few paragraphs here and there without undoing or recreating Jorell, and kind of muted in putty clayed, remolded a little bit of the history and pushed Clovis into his group and kind of rewrote that whole deal. And now Clovis has this huge storyline that's you guys still only know part of, that's going on in the back of my head. Which then, again, like how this trickle effect. So like Jorell led to this, it led to Varathian rewrite, that led to Clovis. Clovis has led to this backstory. That backstory is leading to this other huge rewrite or / addition of Wrath and its history and all that stuff. So like there's huge ideas afoot
And all
to
this stuff
come.
that you can't
It's
talk
definitely
about.
an evolving world, always. And having heard a lot of Jerry's story, Freodin stories, having heard a lot of the stories from past games, I was really looking forward to the the religious aspect of Wrath. It's one of the most uniques I've ever seen, and I actually love that concept and the philosophy behind it all. So what you've done with Wrath is just incredible.
Yeah.
Especially from the religious aspects for me,
Yeah, we're going to do a little
without giving anything away.
side video
More
about the
best.
cosmology of Wrath, and Jerry and I are going to do that down the road so people can, because it hasn't, it's kind of come into play a little bit in in what we've played on camera, but if anyone's just watching this, they wouldn't really understand the full depth of the
They
cosmology
should
and
definitely
how it
check out
works.
the Wrath boards and all the history there.
So the one last question that I did want to bring up before we wrap it up is, like I said, everybody has played D&D there at the table before Darkhounds, and if I'm not mistaken, this would be everybody's first game on camera.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody did any before that.
No.
So we wanted to get your impressions on the differences that the camera makes at the table.
David has to restrain himself for a moment.
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
What differences have you found from having to roleplay in front of a camera as opposed to being at a game where there's no camera present?
Learning to try to ignore it.
Yeah.
To actively ignore something. Even as we started this whole session here, every one of us, Ashley, David, and myself, waved at the camera when we were
Right.
even you saying it was audio only. We're
Yeah.
so engraved. We're like, hey, everyone, did it again.
Yeah.
So learning to actively try to ignore something that is right there
Literally
the whole
in
time
your face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
has been hard, but it's just practice.
Yeah.
It's not even a learned thing. I think we've just kind of become desensitized to it to the
Yeah.
point where it doesn't slow us down anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Until
I
we're
agree.
put, in the DM chair to talk to.
Right, and then we
Once you're recording a promo, it's a different story.
It's a whole different ballpark.
Yeah, I actually think, well, I know for the first couple of sessions it was like, oh my god, but then
me too.
but then now I'm like, oh yeah, we're recording, and I'm like, God, I probably look like I'm doing something really retarded right now because I'm just not even paying attention. You just start doing things that you're just like, wait, what? This is probably.
I think as long as I'm not picking my nose most of the
Right?
time, I'm probably
Yeah.
good.
Did I just do that?
I've found the big thing is the non-game aspects. We put those in. You put the game in front of the camera, and now all of a sudden, we can't go. Let's talk about the latest movie, or have like a side conversation on that. Or as I was very much a culprit of early on, I have a tendency to snack when I'm gaming, and Jared didn't let me live that down for ever.
Because the microphone picked it all up.
Because especially with the season 1 aspect, the camera was in a seat right between you and him.
Yeah.
So even when he thought he was being sneaky, he's right in front of the camera. It's like, Like, camera right there.
Right?
You know,
Or if he turns away from the camera, it's still just like all of a sudden just like he just turns away from the camera and he comes back and his jaw's up and down.
Yeah.
Like, we know what you're doing.
and the sidetracks, which on our YouTube we've now started recording the games of Out of the Abyss that David's running, and you're going to be posting Ashley's Christmas special.
I'll get that
Oh,
up today.
yeah, my Christmas special.
So on those, we have a camera in the room,
Right.
but it's not intended to be recording. And there are side conversations, and we're messing around, and Jared's doing his Batman impersonation. Look and
Hilarity ensues, though.
yeah, it's hilarious, it's funny, and we have those side conversations because they're fun and they're interesting. But for an outside viewer, they may not be as interesting. So here we are coring it down to like, this is, you want to see gaming, we're gaming, and you're going to get to see the characters develop, which had built it, kind of distilled down, and allows us to pack a lot more into a regular session,
Yeah.
because we're not having lots of side conversations
That's true.
and
Yeah.
stuff, which is really interesting. But it also makes
Has
us be,
focused us a lot.
but it's also making us be really conscious of like, oh, I wanted to tell JR this thing, and I can't because we're in the middle of the game right now.
Yep.
But that's also why I'll let like the random conversations go on for like an extra hour before we start
Right.
recording. It's like, please just get it out of your system. I know we don't hang out all the time, and I want to chat too. But like, if we want to get a good 3-4 hour game in, then we're gonna start recording.
For me, I guess, camera, no camera. I'm an only child who's in theater, so to me it was just like, oh, whatever. Like, the nervousness did not even exist. I'm like, people get to look at us while we role play, and I get to do theater things?
Dreamy.
It's right up my alley.
No, and I actually, well, kind of backtracking, like, you know, recording your game at our house, it's like, oh yeah, you know, we have people that aren't used to the camera, so then they're all like, oh my god.
Yeah, and you're used to it now.
Like, yeah, and like the four of us are just like, yeah, whatever. Like, we just totally ignore it, like, completely. I'm sure there's
Yeah.
one session where I'm like walking back and forth in front of the camera like 20 times.
The
So
first time we set it up, one of the players tried to hide behind one of the other players.
Yeah.
It's just like, we want to be on the camera.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Cheyenne didn't want to be on
Yeah.
there yet.
Yeah.
It's funny because how just quickly they just kind of like ignored it at
Yeah,
that point. You
yeah,
know, they're coming around really quick.
Yeah. Once you start getting into playing and you're actually focusing on the game, you stop thinking. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
the same thing as like being, you know, with theater. Like, okay, I've done 13 freaking rehearsals. There's people in the audience. Oh yeah, whatever. I forgot. I'm just going
Yeah.
through the motions.
Yeah.
So I mean, for me, I had the biggest advantage of everyone when we first sat down. Like, I already been doing some YouTube stuff, like mostly like in front of a microphone, but also in front of some camera stuff. So.
Right.
To me, it was like, all right, well, whatever. This is just another day. I've gotten used to I'll just friggin' talk, and whatever happens, happens, and I get to edit this later, anyways, right?
Yeah.
I have the final say on what how stupid I look.
Even the podcast recording didn't entirely prepare me, because for the podcast we will occasionally go quiet and like communicate in like sign language miming things, and then start talking again, and then when it gets edited, just that silent part gets cut out. We can't do that anymore with the camera.
Yeah. Yeah, if I start doing, I mean, and there is still some cutting in the 360 video, but it's more apparent because you see this crossfade of the video. In audio, you can cut whole chunks out and you'll never even know because it's just like, okay, this sentence ended, this sentence started. But in video, when this sentence ends and you're standing, you know, off to the left, and then the next sentence starts and you're standing off to the right, oh, well, there's a big giant physical cue that, you know, we just did a jump cut.
Yeah.
So that's pretty sweet.
Obviously happened.
So I try to keep the editing down to a minimum, but at the same time, I'm not going to waste a lot of people's time because there have been times where we got off topic and we talked about this or that, or we, because of camera issues, we lost focus, and so I think for the camera deal, there was something I was going to say, and I'm trying to remember what it was.
It's helped teach you patience with the heat sink.
Yes. I was going to mention because you had mentioned the focus thing, like the distilled thing. I think that it, like you said, we can do in 3 hours what might take other groups and sessions 5 or 6 hours.
Yeah.
Because since we're not getting off topic, we don't have 20-minute rants about the movie that we just saw in the middle of a session. We try to keep the combat as quickly paced as possible. I mean, like D20 Pros helped with that. We have some other tricks that we're going to be using for like combat in season 2, where like we're kind of distilling the combat down to almost like a challenge kind of system, which we did a little bit on the one session that unfortunately we had a huge issue with and didn't record, but then later re-recorded.
So sad.
I try not to bring up the bad times.
It was so good, though. It was so good.
We redid it, and it was a close second, but nowhere near as good as the first original session, I have to say. Yeah. There were some things that I like about the redo.
I do too, yeah.
Over the first one, but there was more things I liked about the first version than the second version. But anyways, not talking about the dark days. We have a new camera now, by the way.
That one got retired.
Also, all sorts of great things happening.
Fired.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that's nice. And again, because this is an actual play series that's hosted by a GM advice podcast, we try to stick to the game. We try to make sure that we're trying to use as many of the tips and tricks that we talk about, as much of the game theory that we talk about. And I miss opportunities left and right, and every session I sit down and I go, when we're all done, I'm like, fuck.
And that gets brought up on the podcast. They come watch us play, watch us use some of the opportunities, and watch us miss a ton of opportunities.
Yeah.
Hey, and now that you have the other video with when we play at my place, you also have examples of things not to do, like split the party. Two of you. You guys.
It never works out well.
What, like two of the
you have
most
to watch that.
experienced players?
So funny. So funny. They have to be a Constitution save of 13, both of them. Fail.
So we're gonna stop talking about that now.
Let's move on.
So we're just gonna kind of wrap it up. But we have a lot coming up for season 2 that we're really excited for. I mean, even we're like, okay, we're gonna talk about season 1, not season 2, and season 2 kept bleeding in. So I think we've got a lot going on there. That's great. New camera, new setup. Things are moving and changing around. There's a lot of character development. There's some great moments. And we are going to be debuting that. We're aiming for January 15th for Season 2 to start. It is going to be on our YouTube channel as well as Veer.tv. You can stay tuned to our pages for more information and updates. And if you like the trip so far, hopefully you're going to like where it keeps going. So thank you for joining us. You can catch us as the new episodes go up, and we will be doing Game Master Studio continuing every week. And of course, we'll see you next time we stop into the studio.